Alibaba surged yesterday almost 10% on the news that the whole Ant Group restructuring is nearly done and now we're closer to an IPO. And so let's dive into that a little bit more. And so guys, as you smash that like button, let me run that intro. All right, welcome to the channel. And if you're new here, here's where we talk about everything value investing. And so if you haven't done so, hit that subscribe button. So let's dive right into this one. So you can see Alibaba actually surged, I would say over maybe close to 10% during the day. And then it came back down a little bit, but up overall 8% on the day. And so obviously there was some good news here. And this is largely what people were looking for a couple of years ago when it came to the Ant Group IPO. There was expected to be a bit of a surge in wealth creation with the Ant IPO that everyone is a little bit banking on. I don't have it in my valuation. I pretty much wrote any type of Ant Group IPO or anything along those lines off when they went into the reorganization process. And so I think a lot of people have done that. And so even just getting near the IPO process, the shares are already up 8%. What happens when they actually announce a date, or they announce that they intend to go public in the next couple of months, or even in the next 6 months? I think the shares increase dramatically in that situation. But I'm not saying that that's going to happen. I'm just saying that because a lot of people have not built in the Ant IPO, I think there's a lot of upside if it does get announced that it's going to happen in the near term, which at the moment they have not announced that. And so high level, what ended up happening is it looks like the CCP is really worried about another banking crisis occurring. And so they don't want the tech companies to hold so much power in the financial space. And so that's why they wanted to reorganize Ant Group. And that's kind of what they did. And you guys know much of the story, so I don't have to reiterate to you, but ultimately Ant wanted to go public. The CCP stopped it. They reorganized it. And I believe Alibaba's and Jack Ma's holdings in Ant Group declined as a result of the reorganization. I'd like sort of like a finalized view of what the reorganization looks like. They have given us a little bit of information, but ultimately I want to know what it looks like at the end of the day so I can model it out accordingly. But what ended up happening is at the end of all of the reorganization, Ant Group actually got slapped with $1 billion fine. Now, this is where it gets a little bit in the mud because, you know, the CCP keeps saying that they want good tech business environment overall, but you keep slapping your biggest companies with these huge fines, and ultimately it just weighs in on the valuation for the securities. And so if you're looking for the old days of higher valuations in China, you're just not going to get it, I don't think, because the CCP continues to do a lot of these unpredictable things. Now, we knew that Ant Group was probably going to get slapped with a fine, but it's just, you know, another example of the CCP being very strong, or at least if it's a justified fine, they're not giving us enough information as to why it's a justified fine. $1 billion is not a little bit of money, especially in China. And this is what I mean in terms of it keeps happening. You know, Alibaba got hit with a large fine in 2021, Meituan, Didi, and now Ant Group. And so, you know, it just keeps happening. And I'm saying that the market has just priced this in now. And so when it comes to, you know, thinking about the cash flows that your company is going to generate, you almost have to build in a fine estimation. So it's like maybe take 95% of the cash flows that the company is going to generate and forecast that out. Maybe take some other amount out for stock-based compensation dilution. And that is the value of the company. So you kind of have to think about the fact that there's other costs that may not necessarily be showing up in the trending that you're using to forecast out free cash flows. But ultimately, I think the market is just doing this because it's very difficult to predict the actions of the CCP. But on a lighter note, you know, because they've got fined $1 billion by the regulators, does this mean that they're closer to the end of the business overhaul? And does it mean that we're nearing the IPO? I think so, and I think a lot of analysts also believe that, which is why the stock was up so much. And so here's a little bit more detail on the fine. So they got fined $982 million that included the confiscation of illegal income. Now, they didn't tell us what that illegal income was, but here's what they did tell us. The regulator said Ant violated laws and regulations when it conducted banking and insurance activities and engaged in payment and settlement businesses in past years. They also said there was problems with the company's corporate governance, investor protections, and fulfillment of obligations to prevent money laundering. Some of Ant's activities also flouted regulations for mutual fund sales. None of this screams $1 billion fine to me. It almost sounds like the only money laundering is the money that the government is taking away from them. Like, that's kind of how it feels. Obviously, I'm a little bit more upset at this than I probably should be, and there's a lot of information that's not being shared with the public at the moment, and the CCB could very well be justified for the fine. It just doesn't scream $1 billion fine to me based on the information that I have. Now, you guys might know more information than I do. And I know that the market is very positive with this because it's just like, okay, well, it's $1 billion and it's over. It's a drop into the bucket relative to what the IPO proceeds will be for the ultimate valuation of the company, et cetera, et cetera. But the way I think about it is it just makes things, it just continues to make things unpredictable. And when it comes to building out that valuation model, I was originally thinking, maybe I'll start building in a potential for like CCP fines, but the way I think about it is I'm already buying at 50% of intrinsic value, so that is one of those things that's taken in. So I don't think I'm going to change the way that I model the company out, but keep in mind that you probably want to use a lower multiple. Now, I ultimately always use a lower multiple. I don't think I ever go above 15, and that's because I'm forecasting way out, so that's not going to change anyways. But maybe even the ultimate multiple might want to bring down a little bit. Maybe instead of 15, use 12.5. I'm not sure. I haven't really thought about it yet. Once I have more information, I'm going to start building out the new model for Alibaba. I haven't done that yet, just because there's a lot of uncertainty in the environment right now. I don't think it's even worth doing so. No matter what type of model I build, it's just going to show that the company's undervalued because largely the historical business, the free cash flow generating business, is worth more than what we're valuing it at right now because I'm just valuing it on a free cash flow, and the other businesses, you'll notice in the way that I model it out, they just act as a charge against free cash flow. So if you take all those other businesses out, so you strip them out and you just leave, the legacy business in place, then of course you just get a higher valuation because it's a higher free cash flow amount. And then of course you can throw in price to sales or whatever multiples for the other businesses, and so you'll ultimately get to a higher sum of parts valuation than the valuation that I'm currently that I have built out for Alibaba in the tracker. Now, I want to know what you guys think about how you're valuing this whole thing out now that the company is not necessarily just IPOing Ant Group potentially, but also like the listings of their other business segments. Have any of you guys actually tried valuing this thing out? Now, this is what got the market so hot on this whole thing. Ant Group said that the work has now been completed, and what they're talking about is that they've been conducting a business rectification proactively since 2020, and of course in conjunction with the regulators, and it looks like the work has now been completed. But here's something interesting to note. Look how much profitability for Ant Group has dropped subsequent to the rectification work. So that's something to pay attention to. It is not the same Ant Group coming out of the rectification process. So ultimately, there's a lot of hope right now for an Ant Group IPO announcement, and that's what's taking the stock up. But I still expect that this security will be volatile in the mean term. There's just a lot of questions. There's a global market slowdown that we may or may not be moving towards that, of course, will impact the Chinese economy. There's other domestic issues in China. I just think that there's going to be a lot of volatility, and that's not anything that we're not aware of or we haven't already been experiencing. And so it's just par for the course. We'll see how this plays out. Once again, I want you guys to let me know how you guys value this thing out. But also, the other thing is, when I talk about some of the domestic issues, what I'm talking about is that China is still going through a property issue. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, I built a very informative 4-part series on the property, allegedly close to like crisis that's happening in China. And you can actually get access to that video series right here.